So I saw a very interesting comment on social media today talking about Ifrit and exactly where it went all wrong with the poor man. See, the comment I saw was someone talking about World of Warcraft and that, it feels bad when you fully spec and fire, and then you have to go up against an opponent or a boss or whatever, and when you do, you realize that that opponent has full resistance to fire. It feels bad because you realize you're just pretty much pointless, you're not going to be able to do anything. You spend so many countless hours on a certain build in a game like an RPG. This doesn't just go for World of Warcraft, but it goes for so many different, games and stuff out there. You fully spec in a certain element, and then you realize when you face this certain opponent that you need to face, you can't do anything against them. And that's pretty much what happened to Ifrit in this, episode. The poor man is a fire elemental, one of the strongest fire elementals that ever existed, honestly. And, it's very iconic even in Final Fantasy, but the poor man can't even really do anything against a single little slime. Now, granted, I know when it comes to slimes, some slimes in most games are very weak, and you should just brush them aside like, it's nothing. But I have been told by a lot that slimes are incredibly deadly in D&D, Dungeons & Dragons, and I'm not going to get into, the nitty-gritty details of that, but apparently slimes can technically wipe your parties, and many people tend to overlook slimes. Like, slimes are weak little, creatures that you should just overlook because it's just a slime. It doesn't seem like that menacing or crazy compared to something like a demon lord or whatever, but still, at the end of the day, though, it's pretty embarrassing that this god, which is Ifrit, can't even do anything against a single slime. But okay, with that all aside, let's talk about this episode. So, Shizu's backstory. Man. Okay, so I mentioned in my last episode review that I have read a little bit ahead for the manga, and even though I have read ahead, I stated in the last video that if you're still an anime only, stay as anime only, because the anime is very good. It is really adapting the content properly, and it's giving a whole new, new life to this series. It's really just expanding upon it and just making it so much more enjoyable, which, as I said, doesn't mean the manga is bad, the anime is just doing what an anime really should, and once again, this episode just 1,000 times better than the manga, in my personal opinion. The whole Shizu backstory, that hit hard. That really hit my heartstrings, because, knowing what I know and been seeing in the manga but now seeing it in the anime, it really was just so much more emotional, not just because of the music, but the voice acting was really good, and especially just the way the slow, gradual build-up was for that scene with Shizu, when she straight up just basically ended her friend and her familiar like that. It's pretty messed up. It was a really messed up scene, and I think many are gonna understand, what type of life Shizu's had to live for a very long time, and let's put everything in perspective, okay? As I stated in the last episode review, and you found out as well when you watched the episode, Shizu was obviously in a great war. She was in a war that obviously had fire bombings, and, if you know anything about history, you know what that's about. It's, World War, and it was a very dark time, and you gotta imagine, this little girl that was literally summoned from that into a new world, and she's literally almost dead because she has burn marks all over her. She meets this dude, about to abandon her. It's like, please help me, and then he decides to literally give her a spirit, a fire spirit called Ifrit, which literally gets in her body, and she basically becomes cursed. And she has to follow the command of this demon lord, Leon. And it's messed up because she goes from one messed up, cruel world to another, and she literally has to end someone's life that she really cares about, she was making a friend with. So, poor Shizu. You gotta feel bad, because most likely that isn't the only thing she's had to do that's very horrific in her life. It's just a brief little glimpse into the sad life that Shizu has lived. What she's had to do for Leon, the Demon Lord. So yeah, it's a very sad backstory, a little bit more clarification of what exactly happened to her after she was summoned into this world. It wasn't all, roses and, flowers, all that, just happiness. She obviously had a very difficult time in this world. It's very different compared to what happened to Rimuru, and now he is able to, even though he's in a slime, and some might say being a slime might suck, he is definitely having a very good life right now. He's not technically having a bad life. So it's kind of like Shizu got dealt a bad hand, while Rimuru, even though he's not in a human body, he has a lot of good things going for him. He's very powerful. He made, friends with Veldora, which is like the storm dragon, one of the strongest beings in this world. Obviously, he's having a good time. But poor Shizu, she took a big L, basically, just to kind of clarify. But anyways, let's talk about a few little details that happened within this episode that really made me excited. So, as I said, I know what's going on right now, but the action segment of this, I was really blown away by how good that was. Like, the art animation's been good from the start. I've talked about the colorful color palette. It's beautiful. But, man, the action within this episode was... how do I say it? It was just freaking good. Like, it was really good. I know that this action scene was gonna happen, but seeing how high quality it was, and this isn't even, like, the main action or fights of the series, and seeing how great this was, I'm like, well, they're going all out. Like, the music, when you saw her just raise up in the air, and she slowly shifts over into Infreet and all that, and you just see how the fire happens, I'm like, oh my god, like, it's honestly freaking cool. I loved that segment. Easily one of my favorite scenes of the episode when it comes to just seriousness, because you got this sense of dread, this sense of, holy crap, this person's strong. You know, can Riru stand up and face this person? You just got all of these emotions while watching that segment of the episode, and I just think the way that was done, good job on everybody that worked on this episode. Really got those emotions across, and just how powerful Shizu is, also how powerful Riru is, but also just how crazy powerful Leon must be to be able to do something like this and control a spirit like that, which, let's get into all of these little details. So, Riru had a very interesting scene. The man had to face up against this, strong fire spirit, and he has this magic circle pop underneath him, which is, honestly, I love the little detail in that. I love how the animators went in, gave all these details to the magic circle that was being placed underneath Riru. I know many might not care about that, they might overlook it, but there is a lot of attention to detail with that just, summoning circle that was placed underneath Riru, and it really needs to just be, looked at and noticed, because there was a lot of talent put into that. But anyways, when the fire raises up and Rimuru's just, like, getting burnt, you're like, is he gonna die? Like, is this over? Is he done? Is it, GG for our little slime? His slime, for Slife, or whatever how he said it. Basically, is this GG? But apparently, because of what happened when he was dying in the other world, he is resistant to fire magic, which is pretty freaking hilarious. I love that segment, because it's just like, Rimuru's like, oh no, it's over, I'm gonna die, like, oh no, and he's screaming and all that, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh no, is it over? But then obviously he's like, wait a minute, I'm not really taking much damage, what's going on here? And then the Great Sage is like, you have fire nullification and all that, and he's like, oh, I do? And he's like, oh yeah, and he sighs, and then you hear Great Sage like, I love that. I love that segment. I'm very pleased with the way that was done, and so let's get into that. So, Great Sage is someone or an individual that you can kind of say is a skill that Riru has. Well, is a skill that Riru has, but it's funny that it seems like Great Sage has some form of emotions, or at the very least, a little bit of personality, because straight up, when Riru forgot about his abilities, like, fire nullification and all that, he was like, oh, it seemed like the Great Sage is very upset, like, seriously, you forgot about one of your main abilities that you have, which this, I think, is very enjoyable, because this is the exact opposite of Overlord, which I think now I can finally point out. After reading the manga, it's very clear that this series, it does have some similarities to Overlord, obviously. We have our main characters that are OP, we have our main characters that are not human. It's very much like Overlord. But there's one big difference, when it at least comes to Riru and Ainz' character. Ainz is an individual that cannot manage individuals. He cannot really manage, like, his guild. He can't manage, everybody that's, following him. But he is really good with coin. He is really good with his abilities, PvP. He's good at all of that. He knows the game and how to use abilities, items, and stuff inside and out. This man is straight up insane. But someone like Rimu, he obviously, you see a flaw with him. He doesn't really understand how his abilities work. He doesn't know how great his abilities are. He doesn't really try to experiment like Ainz would, but at the same time, he's really good at managing people. We've seen how he's got the dwarfs under his, command. He's got, the goblins under his command. He's got, the wolves under his command. It's obvious that, Rimu is good with people, but when it comes to skills and combat, he's definitely not the best. So just some cool little details here, and so if you notice that if you're an Overlord fan and you're also a Slime fan, you're going to notice how different the two characters are, but there is some similarities, but there is some distinct differences, and I think that's what's making everybody really enjoy this series, because after last season's Overlord coming into this season with Slime, there is similarities, but it's so refreshing because we're not used to something like this. But okay, anyways, continuing on, we have to where Riru actually absorbs Ifrit and gains, like, you know, his power, you would assume. This is pretty much like, you know, episode 2. Remember in episode 2 to where he started fighting creatures to get out of the cave and he started absorbing them and all that and then gaining their powers, their appearance? You could assume that's exactly what just happened. He absorbed, you know, Ifrit and probably got his power, which you gotta imagine is probably gonna be pretty freaking ridiculous, because obviously Ifrit is not a weak individual. I mean, I do like the segment with Veldora, by the way. Very great segment. I'm glad to see that added into the episode, and I know that's going to get everybody hyped. I'm pretty hyped just to see that animated, but it's just great to see that little segment with Veldora talking to Ifrit, like, yeah, you know, let's have a fight and all that. You could come at me. That was great. But getting back on topic, though, basically, Riru, he absorbed Ifrit, which is pretty insane, because that's going to give him quite the power boost. And on top of that, I mean, he's going to have access to certain abilities, most likely, that we were seeing displayed throughout this episode, which is going to, magnify his power on a whole new level. So yeah, cool stuff throughout this episode. I love the little scene where Rimuru's just able to gain more and more power. He's getting stronger as time goes on, and the man's literally, like, absorbing bosses. Like, imagine if you could do that in games. Like, okay, example, let's say you're playing World of Warcraft, and you absorbed the Lich King. Like, imagine gaining the Lich King's power. Like, holy crap. Like, I don't even want to imagine. Or, you know, kill Jaden or Archimon and all that. Just imagine that. Like, oh, that would be insane if you could do that in games. So you imagine how broken that is? Like, it really puts in perspective how broken Rimuru's ability is to be able to do stuff like that. To be able to absorb something like, you know, a free... It's insane. It blows your mind. Because imagine if you were given access to abilities like that. So, before I wrap this video up, I just want to say that in terms of anime adaptation, it's doing a fantastic job. I'm really excited to see, you know, how the later stuff goes on and becomes animated, because this is already amazing. I can't imagine certain individual scenes, and I'm just, oh, like, it can't get here soon enough, because this is a great series. I really have been enjoying it, and I cannot wait to actually probably start the light novel. I was thinking very seriously of starting the light novel because of how much I enjoy this series, because I know the light novel will give a lot more details than even the manga, so I'm probably going to start the light novel very soon as well. But anyways, I want to end this video here. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, how you felt about the action, how you felt about Shizu's backstory to, you know, the individual, like the little fox, you know, individual just getting burnt and all that. Just tell me your thoughts in the comments below. But I love you guys. You have a wonderful day or night wherever you live. Please be safe. Chibi out.